You're standing in the treat aisle. You skip the neon junk food. You reach for the bag that says all natural. You reach for the one that says grain-free. You feel good. You feel like a responsible pet parent. But here's a question that might make you a little uneasy. How many of the treats in your cabinet right now did you choose because they looked healthy without ever flipping the bag over to check? Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Eric Park, your neighborhood veterinarian, and welcome back to the channel. The liver is one of the most forgiving organs in your dog's body. It can lose a huge percentage of its function and your dog will still act completely normal. Still wag their tail. Still beg for dinner. That's what makes liver problems so easy to miss. There's no obvious limp, no dramatic cry of pain. Just a slow decline that often only shows up on a blood test, sometimes during a routine checkup that had nothing to do with why you originally brought your dog in. In my clinic, this is one of the conversations I have most often, and it's rarely a dramatic one. It's usually a quiet moment where I'm going over blood work with a pet parent who did everything right on paper. They researched brands. They avoided anything with a scary-sounding chemical name on the label. And yet something in their routine was still quietly working against them, simply because the pet food and treat industry isn't required to make healthy mean what we assume it means. Now, before we go further, I want to be upfront about something, because I think it matters. Not every item on this list carries the same level of risk. One of these is a well-documented, medically proven danger. A couple are things we've seen linked to liver problems in real cases, though the science is still developing. And a couple are really about smart precautions, not guaranteed harm. I'll be clear about which is which as we go, because you deserve the real picture, not just a scary headline. So today we're covering 5 treats that are marketed as healthy, wholesome, or natural, but that deserve a closer look. Grab a notebook, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and let's get into number 1, because this first one is the single most dangerous item on this entire list, no exaggeration. Number 1. Sugar-free. Peanut butter and baked goods. This is the one I need you to take most seriously today, because unlike everything else on this list, this one is not a maybe. It is a proven, well-established, sometimes fatal danger, and it is hiding in an ingredient most people consider completely wholesome. Picture this. You're stuffing a frozen Kong toy for your dog and you reach for peanut butter. You bought the reduced sugar or sugar-free version because you were trying to do right by your dog's waistline. Here's the problem. Many of those lower sugar products replace sugar with something called xylitol, sometimes relabeled as birch sugar to sound more natural. In people, xylitol is harmless. In dogs, it's one of the most dangerous substances a vet can encounter. Let's keep the biology simple. In a dog's body, xylitol tricks the pancreas into thinking a huge dose of sugar just arrived. The pancreas dumps out insulin, and that insulin then crashes the dog's actual blood sugar to dangerously low levels. A dog can start seizing within an hour of eating something with xylitol in it, and with larger amounts or repeated exposure, xylitol can directly injure liver tissue, sometimes independent of the blood sugar crash entirely. Think of it like a false alarm going off in your dog's body. The pancreas sees xylitol and panics, assuming a flood of sugar is about to hit the bloodstream, so it releases a massive dose of insulin to deal with it. Except that sugar never actually shows up. All that insulin has nowhere to go, so it starts pulling real blood sugar out of circulation instead, and blood sugar drops fast. That's the mechanism behind the sudden collapse. The liver damage that can follow is a separate, additional hit on top of that blood sugar crisis, not a replacement for it. Real-world example. A dog comes into my clinic after getting a small spoonful of healthy peanut butter while the owner was doing dishes. 20 minutes later, he collapses in the kitchen. The owner thinks it's a stroke. It's not. It's xylitol. That dog survived because we caught it fast. Many dogs don't, simply because nobody thought to check the label on something as innocent as peanut butter. I want to give you a sense of scale here, because dangerous can sound abstract until you hear the actual numbers. It doesn't take much. For a lot of products on the market, A piece of gum or a spoonful of sweetened peanut butter can contain enough xylitol to send a medium-sized dog into a hypoglycemic crisis. This isn't a situation where a little bit probably won't hurt. With xylitol, the dose that causes harm can be shockingly small relative to how casually we hand out just a taste of something from the kitchen. The correct way: before any peanut butter, baked good, or sugar-free anything touches your dog's mouth, flip the container over and read the full ingredient list. If you see xylitol or birch sugar anywhere on it, that product never touches your dog, period. Buy peanut butter with only peanuts or peanuts and salt listed as ingredients. And here's a warning that goes beyond treats entirely. Xylitol now shows up in toothpaste, mints, gum, and some medications. If your dog is a countertop surfer, do a quick household sweep this week and save your local animal poison control number in your phone right now before you ever need it. One more thing worth knowing: if you ever suspect your dog got into something containing xylitol, don't wait for symptoms to confirm your suspicion before calling for help. Because the crash can happen fast and hard, this is one of the rare situations in veterinary medicine where getting ahead of the problem before you see a single symptom genuinely changes the outcome. When in doubt, call your vet or poison control and describe exactly what your dog ate. It costs you 5 minutes. The alternative can cost you your dog. Number 2. Myth versus fact. Natural. Jerky treats. Let's do something a little different for this one. I want to run through some common beliefs about jerky treats because this is one of the most misunderstood categories in the entire treat aisle. Jerky feels like the obvious healthy choice. It's dried meat. Nothing else, right? That simplicity is exactly what makes it so easy to trust without a second thought, and exactly why it deserves a closer look. Myth. If it says single ingredient or natural on the bag, it's automatically the safest option on the shelf. Fact. Over the past 2 decades, jerky treats, especially certain imported products, have been linked in a large number of documented cases to dogs developing vomiting, reduced appetite, and increased thirst and urination. Blood work in many of those dogs showed liver strain along with kidney changes. Regulators never pinned down one single confirmed cause across every case, but the pattern was consistent enough that public warnings were issued. The label natural tells you almost nothing about manufacturing quality or sourcing consistency. Myth. If my dog isn't obviously sick, the treats are fine. Fact. This is the part that catches people off guard. Chronic low-level liver stress doesn't look dramatic. It looks like a dog who is a little more tired than usual, drinking slightly more water, and nobody connects it to the treat bag because the dog never once acted sick in an obvious way. Myth. This is only a problem with cheap bargain bin treats. Fact. Price isn't a reliable indicator. What actually matters is traceability. Does the company tell you where the meat came from and how it was processed? Myth. If my dog has eaten this brand for years without a problem, it must be safe forever. Fact. Manufacturing consistency isn't guaranteed to stay the same over time. A supplier can change, a batch can vary, and years of trouble-free feeding doesn't rule out slow, cumulative strain building quietly in the background. This is exactly why periodic blood work, even for a dog that seems perfectly healthy, is worth asking your vet about if jerky treats are a daily habit. So what's the real fact here? The liver is your dog's filtration system. Every single thing that enters the bloodstream gets processed there first. When a jerky treat contains inconsistent residues from manufacturing, the liver is the organ absorbing that impact, treat after treat, for months. I actually saw this exact pattern with a 7-year-old terrier who came in for a routine wellness exam looking completely normal. His blood work told a different story. His liver enzymes were nearly triple where they should be. No new medications, no known toxin exposure. Turned out he got a chicken jerky strip almost daily as a reward. We pulled it completely, and 6 weeks later his liver values had dropped by more than half. The correct way: choose jerky brands that clearly state domestic sourcing and manufacturing with real traceability, ideally with published third-party testing. Be cautious with bulk bin or vaguely labeled products. Or make your own thin sliced chicken or turkey breast, dehydrated at home at 200 to 250 degrees Fahrenheit until fully dry, no seasoning, no garlic or onion powder. And rotate brands rather than feeding the exact same product every single day for years, so no single source has years of cumulative exposure behind it. A quick practical tip if you go the store-bought route: keep a simple note on your phone of which brands and batches you've fed over time. It sounds excessive, but if your dog ever does develop unexplained symptoms, being able to hand your vet a specific list of exactly what they've been eating and when can meaningfully speed up figuring out what's going on, rather than trying to reconstruct months of feeding history from memory during a stressful emergency visit. Quick heads up before we move on. The next treat on this list is one that's exploding in popularity in the pet wellness world right now, and almost nobody realizes the real danger isn't the product itself, it's what it teaches your dog to do outside. Number 3. The backyard mushroom story. I want to tell you about a case first, before I explain what caused it, because I think the order matters here. A family's Labrador spends a normal afternoon in the backyard after a rainstorm. That evening, he throws up once. By morning, he seems totally fine, playful, eating breakfast, wagging his tail like nothing happened. The family doesn't think twice about it. 3 days later, out of nowhere, he refuses food. His gums turn a dull yellow. He collapses. At the emergency vet, his liver values are catastrophic. Despite aggressive treatment, he doesn't survive. Nobody ever saw him eat anything unusual. So what happened? Here's the reveal. Mushroom treats and supplements, reishi, lion's mane, turkey tail, have become genuinely trendy in pet wellness circles, and some of that research is promising when it comes to properly dosed, veterinary formulated products. But that trend has created an unexpected side effect that has nothing to do with the supplement aisle. More pet parents now assume that because mushrooms are being marketed as healthy, a wild mushroom popping up in the backyard after rain must be similarly harmless. That assumption can be fatal. Certain wild mushrooms, especially in the Amanita family, contain toxins that directly destroy liver cells, and they're some of the most potent liver toxins found anywhere in nature. This is worth pausing on because it's a genuinely strange psychological trap. Nobody would let their dog eat a random pill they found on the sidewalk. But a mushroom growing in the grass doesn't register as dangerous the same way, especially once mushroom has been reframed in our minds as a wellness ingredient rather than a wild plant of unknown identity. Mushroom identification is genuinely difficult even for trained experts, and toxic species can closely resemble harmless ones at a glance. There is no reliable way to eyeball a backyard mushroom and know it's safe. Here's what makes this so dangerous. After eating a toxic mushroom, a dog often seems fine for a day or two, sometimes with only mild vomiting that quickly passes. That quiet period is called the latent phase. Underneath the surface, the damage is already happening. By the time obvious symptoms appear, days later, the liver damage may already be severe. The correct way: if mushrooms grow anywhere in your yard, especially after rain, walk your property and remove them before letting your dog out unsupervised. Never assume a wild mushroom is safe. Just because store-bought mushroom supplements are marketed as healthy, they are not the same thing at all. If your dog ever eats a wild mushroom, don't wait to see if symptoms show up. Call your vet or poison control immediately, because with this specific danger, speed matters more than almost anything else. And if you want the benefits of medicinal mushrooms for your dog, stick to a veterinary formulated supplement with a known dose, not something growing in the grass. Before we move to number 4, I want to say this clearly. This is not me telling you to panic every time you walk your dog past a park. It's specifically about your own yard, where mushrooms can pop up overnight after rain, and where your dog has unsupervised access. A quick 5-minute check after a rainy week is genuinely all it takes. Number 4. The treat you already own, sitting in your cabinet right now. Here's one that genuinely surprises even experienced pet parents, because it isn't about a specific ingredient at all. It's about something almost nobody thinks about: how long that bag has been sitting open. You could buy the single healthiest, cleanest treat on the market, and it can still become a liver risk purely based on how it was stored in your own home after you brought it through the door. Many of the healthiest sounding treats, grain-free biscuits, dehydrated sweet potato chews, air-dried liver bites, share one thing in common: minimal preservatives, which is exactly what makes them marketable as natural. But preservatives exist for a reason: they help prevent mold. When these treats sit in a warm garage or a loosely sealed bag for months, certain molds can grow, particularly on starchy ingredients like corn, wheat, and peanuts. Those molds can produce a toxin that is considered one of the most damaging substances to the liver that we know of in food science, and it doesn't take a large amount for repeated low-level exposure to matter over time. Here's the part that surprises people: visible mold isn't always required. Sometimes contamination happens before the mold is ever visible, especially with lower quality grain sourcing. But the risk climbs sharply once a bag is opened and exposed to humidity for weeks. A multi-dog household experienced a sudden, unexplained wave of vomiting and low energy across 3 of their 4 dogs in the same week. Blood work on all 3 showed elevated liver enzymes. After some digging, it turned out all 3 had been sharing from a large bag of natural grain-based biscuits left open in a humid laundry room for nearly 2 months. The 4th dog, a picky eater who barely touched the treats, was completely fine. I want to pause on that detail because it's actually the clue that cracked the case. If it had been a contagious illness, all 4 dogs likely would have been affected. The fact that only the 3 dogs who actually ate the treats got sick, and the one who avoided them stayed healthy, pointed straight at the treat bag rather than anything else in the house. The correct way: once you open a natural treat bag, especially anything with corn, wheat, or peanuts, move the contents into an airtight container and store it somewhere cool and dry, never a humid laundry room or garage. Write the date you opened it on the bag and aim to finish or toss it within 4 to 6 weeks, even if it still looks fine. If you ever notice a musty smell or fuzzy texture, throw out the entire bag, not just the visibly affected pieces. And consider buying smaller bags more often rather than one bulk bag that sits around for half a year. It costs a little more per pound, but you're essentially paying for freshness. Number 5 is coming up next, and I'll warn you now, this one might be the most surprising item on the entire list, because it's a treat that trainers everywhere actively recommend. Number 5. Comparing 2 popular training rewards. This last one is going to feel like a genuine plot twist, because I'm about to tell you that one of the most popular, most recommended training treats in the entire dog world deserves a second look, at least in how it's used. Let's compare 2 treats side by side, the way a lot of trainers actually use them. Freeze-dried liver treats versus plain cooked chicken breast, both used as high-frequency training rewards. Liver treats are famous for a reason. Dogs go wild for the smell, which makes them incredibly effective for reinforcing behavior fast. Nutritionally, liver is dense, packed with iron, B vitamins, and a lot of vitamin A. Chicken breast, by comparison, is far less exciting to most dogs, but it's much lower in that concentrated vitamin A load. On paper, if you only looked at a nutrition label, liver looks like the clear winner. More nutrients, more punch, more bang for your buck. That's exactly why it's become the default choice for so many trainers. But nutrition density cuts both ways. A treat that's incredibly rich in a fat-soluble vitamin is fantastic in small, occasional amounts, and much less fantastic when it becomes the primary reward delivered dozens of times a day, week after week. Here's the catch with liver. Vitamin A gets stored in the body rather than flushed out, and one of the main storage sites is the liver itself. Used occasionally, that's not a problem at all. But in households doing intensive training, agility, obedience, scent work, where treats might be delivered dozens or even hundreds of times in a single session, liver can end up being the primary reward almost every day. Over months, that steady accumulation can place real strain on the liver, alongside effects on bone and joints. I saw this with a dedicated agility competitor whose 4-year-old border collie had started seeming stiff after training, which she'd chalked up to normal wear and tear. Routine blood work also showed mild, persistent liver enzyme elevation. Going through her training routine, it turned out freeze-dried liver was her go-to reward, delivered hundreds of times across a single competition weekend. We didn't eliminate liver treats, they're genuinely great for training, but we cut the volume way down and rotated in other rewards. Within a few months, both the stiffness and the liver values improved. What made this case tricky to catch is exactly what makes this whole topic tricky. Nothing about her dog's day-to-day behavior screamed problem. He was happy, energetic, eating well. The only clue was a subtle stiffness that looked exactly like normal athletic wear and tear, and blood work that only got checked because it happened to be time for his annual exam. The correct way. Liver treats aren't bad. Don't throw out your training pouch. The fix is rotation. Save liver for your highest value moments and lean on lower density rewards like plain cooked chicken, small cubes of steamed carrot, or a low-calorie commercial training treat for everyday, high-repetition use. A simple trick. Break liver treats smaller than the package suggests. Dogs respond to taste and smell far more than size, so a pea-sized crumb often works just as well as a full piece at a fraction of the vitamin A. If you're someone who trains frequently, whether that's agility, obedience, or just working on manners at home, it's worth keeping a rough mental tally of roughly how often liver shows up in a typical week versus other rewards. You don't need to weigh anything or count treats obsessively. Just a general awareness of whether liver has become your everyday default rather than your special occasion reward is usually enough to catch the pattern before it becomes a real problem. One more thing. Before we wrap up, I want to add a quick bonus point here because it ties everything in this video together. A lot of what we've covered today isn't really about any single ingredient being evil. It's about volume, frequency, and storage. 3 things that rarely get mentioned on a treat bag, but that matter just as much as the ingredient list itself. A treat given occasionally, stored properly, and rotated with other options is a completely different risk profile than the exact same treat given daily, for years, from a bag that's been sitting open in a warm cabinet. This is actually good news, because it means you don't need to become a suspicious label detective who trusts nothing. You just need 3 simple habits. Read the ingredient list instead of the marketing words on the front, store treats properly once opened, and rotate your rewards instead of relying on one single go-to treat for absolutely everything. Those 3 habits alone address the vast majority of what we talked about today. Let's step back and look at what we actually covered today. And I want to be honest about the strength of each one. Xylitol in sugar-free peanut butter and baked goods is a proven, sometimes fatal danger that one is not up for debate. Jerky treats and moldy natural treats are documented associations, patterns we've seen repeatedly in real cases, even if the exact mechanism isn't always pinned down in every single incident. Wild mushrooms are a clear, serious risk if your dog has access to them, though how much it applies to you depends entirely on your yard and location. And liver treat overuse and mushroom supplement confusion are really about smart moderation and awareness, not treats you need to be afraid of. Here's a broader habit that matters more than memorizing this list. Anytime you see a word like natural, wholesome, or superfood on packaging, treat it as an invitation to look closer, not a substitute for looking closer. Those words aren't strictly regulated, which means a bag can say all natural while telling you almost nothing about sourcing or quality control. The single best habit you can build is flipping every package over and reading the actual ingredients every time, no matter what the front of the bag promises. You don't need to overhaul your entire treat cabinet tonight. Pick one thing from this video to start with this week. Maybe it's checking your peanut butter label right now. Maybe it's writing today's date on your open bag of biscuits. Maybe it's just swapping a couple of daily liver treats for plain chicken instead. Small, consistent changes protect your dog's liver far more than one overwhelming overhaul you can't stick with. And if you take away just one thing from this entire video, let it be this. None of this means treats are the enemy. Treats build trust, reinforce good behavior, and are honestly one of the simple joys of being a pet parent. This is about being an informed label reader, not about becoming afraid of your own treat cabinet. If this video helped you look at your treat cabinet a little differently, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this kind of safety information reach more pet parents. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and tell me in the comments, which one of these 5 surprised you the most? I read every comment I can. Give your dog a scratch behind the ears for Dr. Eric Park tonight, and go check that treat bag. Stay safe, trust your instincts, and I'll see you in the next video.